welcome to Texon Video Conferences Having Coffee. Sean Graham is joining me today. Welcome, Sean.
Thanks for having me.
So Sean and I, Sean is joining me for our second session together. First session went so well. We had a lot of comments and requests on our video that we decided to do a second one. So he's joining me for coffee today. Cheers.
Cheers.
Your cup of coffee. There we go.
What are you having?
I'm having an Americano today.
I'm having a latte macchiato.
Oh, look at you, fancy.
Oh.
So today we're going to rock everybody's socks with some information on the privacy commissioner. She's out and about. There's a lot of things in the news. I think he or she. I think she's a she. Don't quote me on that. But a lot of things in the news about medical records, about some student records, and things getting breached. Again, when they're big enough to make the news, that's when people think about it. But most people just hear about privacy and they're like, nah, that doesn't apply to me. But technically, no business is exempt, right? So what type of information would be considered private, Sean?
Yeah, so basically, I'll start off by saying this, that in 2018, the Privacy Commissioner of Canada put some teeth into this legislation, and it's called PIPEDA, or Privacy Information Protection and Electronic Documents Act. And basically what it laid out exactly what was considered private information, and that is anything that's identifiable to an individual or an organization. So phone numbers, names, addresses, any kind of resumes that you keep on file, any kind of IP you keep on file, anything that identifies individuals, like ages, health records, social insurance numbers. You go down the list. Anything that points to a person. The government, they said, we want to make sure we really lock down what is private information, because privacy is very, very important, because records are sold on the black market all the time. But they wanted to lock it down, and so they said, okay, we're going to put teeth to this, and here's what we're going to do it. We're going to make people responsible for taking care of private records, and if there is any risk or any reasonable risk for significant harm, we will investigate and we will do a privacy audit of your organization. So what we found on our side from insurance and risk management, we see tons of clients that are having they're having a breach, but they're not sure what to do, and they're not aware of this act, and that there's tools in this act that help us to identify what are the right things to do and how to show that you're not negligent, but you're actually responsible with private information. Because that's what the government's looking for. They want to see that you're being responsible. And with this act, they've shown us how. And there's 10 principles they want us to walk out to achieve that responsibility.
So one of the first principle in that is accountability. So talk to us a little bit about accountability, because that for me was a little bit eye-opening on what it means.
Yeah. So accountability basically means that the organization that collects the information is responsible for it. Period. Meaning, you collect information, but you use some sort of vendor to process your payments. You are responsible for any loss of information, not the payment processor. You collect information and you give it to your MSP to manage it, the information. The person who chose that MSP, let's say Innovation Networks, they chose you. If there's a breach of that information from Innovation, knock on wood that would ever happen, the people who chose you are responsible for it, not you, and not Innovation Networks.
And so we went over that when we were doing our insurance, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
We are insured for what we're not, right?
Yep. So that's when it comes to information and accountability, the buck stops with the people who collected the information. That's the key principle there.
So you can't pass the buck. So
you cannot.
So the accountability here is, I don't care if you're a popsicle stand, you've got employees, you've got vendors, you're collecting some type of information. So you do have some accountability there. So you've got to own that. And then again, if you pass off that information to a third party, just because you have a third party payroll company, doesn't mean that you are now absolute of any responsibility. Still lies with you.
It absolutely lies with you. And what you'll see is that the vendor, whoever you've chosen, limits their liability for privacy in particular. They limit their liability for any kind of claim that comes against them because they can't cover every single one of their clients. It's just not possible. The payment processor, they have 10,000 clients or 200,000 clients. There's just no way they could cover all those clients. So it's just standard practice. And the government recognized that with this accountability aspect. You are responsible for the information you collect, no matter who you give it to.
Responsibility lies with the individual company
who collected the information.
So then principle number 2, identifying the purpose. So
basically you have to be able to state clearly what is the purpose of having this information. We live in the world of big data and people want to collect lots of information because they consider it power. Well, information can also be a real pain in the butt if it bites you, because if you don't need it and you can't justify it to the privacy commissioner why you have it, you're being irresponsible, and you'll be found negligent as a result if there's a breach because you had information you did not need for your purposes.
Nice. Yeah. Don't want to do that. It sounds like a good idea. Just collect it all and we'll sort through it later.
Yeah, no. In my world, I tell people all the time, as little as possible. Like just only what you need. That's it.
And then this one here was my favorite here. So consent. Principle number 3 is consent. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, so basically the principle of consent is you must obtain the individual's consent for use and disclosure of their information. You cannot disclose their information to anybody else. Like it's so tight on this that like you are responsible to tell people, I've given your information to a third party to process your payment. I've given your information to an MSP. You have to have consent from people to use their information. Now, pragmatically, how does that actually work? It rarely does it work that way. But this is one of the principles they have in place. And so you need to be able to prove that you're at least communicating with people. Prevents the idea behind this is to prevent the sale of information to other people so that they can use it.
And what I really liked about that, the thing that got me in that consent paragraph was the informed consent. That
informed.
not only do I need your consent, but it needs to be you need to be informed as to why I want that consent. So I don't just get to windangle you with fancy words and a quick click. I have to really explain to you why I'm using that information or giving it to a third party. You need to know why I'm doing what I'm doing.
One of the questions that the privacy commissioner will ask in an audit is, can you provide me with the document you use for informed consent? Mm-hmm. And most people look at me when I say that and they go, what is that?
Right. But they went and wrote that into law, so we're responsible for it. Right?
It is in the law.
Right. So number 4, that goes down to limiting collection, right? So what we referred to before is limit the amount of information that you are collecting.
Only what you need.
Only necessary. Right? Number 5, limit use, disclosure, and retention.
I want to focus on the retention part of this. If you don't need the information anymore, destroy it, shred it. So we're not just talking electronic data. We're talking paper data as well. I have some clients who have reams of paper data, and to which I've gone through their offices before COVID and said, what do you do with all your paper files? And they said, we just keep them. I look at them, please don't. Please get Iron Mountain in here. Please shred it. Because every file you have, if it's breached and you're found negligent, it's a liability.
It's a liability. Get rid of it.
Yeah, get rid of it.
And then number 6 principle is accuracy. So not only it has to be limited, it has to be accurate as well, up to date, and the purpose of its use, right?
Yeah, exactly. Accuracy, people change their phone numbers, change their addresses, change their emails, change all kinds of stuff. And if you've got old records that are out of date, phone numbers get reassigned to new people, addresses get moved to new people. Typically emails don't, but you have a responsibility to make sure the information you have is accurate, which is why you'll find I don't know if you ever got one of those emails that says, do you still want to be a part of our email list? Please update your information. That's part of that is part of the PIPEDA requirements to have accurate information on your clients.
Super awesome. Yeah. And then one of my favorites here is the safeguards. Number 7, the principle is make sure you've got appropriate safeguards in place.
Yeah, this is right in your bailiwick, Andreas. This is where you shine, right? Like how to set up the structures to put the right safeguards in place, and I think you have a 3-pronged approach, right? Like how you go about that.
We do, but typically we're not just looking at the physical security, but then the digital security, making sure that everything is communicating via proper channels, encrypted. Who's accessing what, how it's being accessed, and why it's being accessed, and do the right people have the right access to the right stuff? Are you giving, we couldn't get Susie to log on, so we just gave her admin access, and now Susie has access to everything.
Right. Yeah.
Right. A lot of that happens, right? It's a part of a troubleshooting step, but nobody ever removed it. Well, now she can view everything. So is any of that stuff being audited? Is it locked down? Is it
right,
set up? Right. I wouldn't want people to just think that happens in small companies. It happens in large companies as well. There are the physical, but there are the digital security. Not just the policies, but the safeguards, and the auditing tools to make sure that those things are in place and that they're reviewed on a continual basis. And then the employee awareness, making sure that the employees are aware. If somebody comes and asks me for my password for something, I don't just give it to them. Right? Or somebody calls me and says, "Oh, hi, I'm XYZ from here. I'd like to know this information. Can I get their social insurance number?" No, you can't. You can't share that information, right? Kind of very much the same like we do with phished. They need to be aware of what that looks like, right? And so doing continual training on that stuff helps. And then the most important thing is there is a section in there that I noticed was on teleworking and working out of the office. What's being transferred to the office? How's it being accessed? Is it secure? Is it going over an encrypted line?
That's a huge issue right now. That's a huge issue.
Huge issue. And do they have the ability to copy to their local machine? Here's another thing I see all the time is, we just moved everything to OneDrive. And somebody puts in their personal OneDrive, not in their business OneDrive. And then all of a sudden it gets mixed out, and then all of a sudden they drop it into the wrong folder, and it gets dropped in the same folder that they share with their kids' soccer ball team. And now everybody's got access to the financial records or the payroll file. Oops.
That happened in Burnaby, actually. The school board out that way. One of the school boards out that way. I won't name the actual school board, but it was in Burnaby the incident occurred. The school board was not Burnaby, and they had a laptop in their car. It had like 10,000 student records on this laptop on a personal folder. And it was lost, and they had to declare it, and the information started showing up on the internet.
I cannot tell you how many times we've seen that with personal sharing tools, where people try to go the cheap route. They're like, we're just going to use this. We're not going to bother setting up proper security. We're just going to, everything's fine. We're just one big company. We don't need to secure anything.
Yeah.
Nothing we have is really private within our employees. Well, great, but now it's not private to the world because
to the world, exactly.
Because they wouldn't drop it off somewhere else, right? So that securing those transmissions and securing those files and the access, and then auditing it is important. So.
Having an automatic audit system is huge. Like if you can institute an automatic audit system where you can click on a file on an audit date, you can see where the breach came in, and you can see exactly which files were breached because of the access audit that's already in place. Mm-hmm. That's huge. That's the difference between you were saying this earlier. It's the difference between your entire database has been exposed to the internet versus one file folder.
Yeah, I'll have a little story for you. We got 3 more of these, and I'll tell you what.
So, I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm all excited. Sorry.
No worries. So principle 8 is openness.
Yeah. So that's really about your company needing to have stated policies in place where you can say, here's our privacy policy. Here's how we handle our information. This is what everybody knows about in our company, and our customers are aware of as well. You'll see these on the back of websites all the time. Here's our privacy statement.
Mm-hmm.
And the privacy statement, it needs to be public. You got it. Yeah.
And then individual access. So if you're collecting information on me, I need to be able to call you and say, hey, what do you have on me? Show me what you've got. Right?
Yeah. You have responsibility to be able to prove what you have.
Yeah. Kind of like you can go to Google and say, hey, what do you have on me?
I want you, that was the big fight in Europe about Google, right? Europeans wanted the right to be forgotten by Google.
Right.
And so this is individual access, is the ability to say, I want you to forget me.
Right. And then number 10, the final principle is challenge compliance. So they want an individual within the corporation or outside the corporation to be able to say, I'm challenging, we're not being compliant on this. Who do I go to? There's a process in place internally. They know that they can say, hey, Sean, compliance isn't being done here. Can you guys take care of it? Right?
Yeah. So this one is not terribly popular with most companies, but it's basically the government says, we want there to be a snitch ability in your company without reprehensible consequences for the individual. We want companies to be held to account, and the whistleblower. And you know what? I'm inclined to agree that when it comes to privacy, we need to be able to say, if our company's not doing the responsible thing, we should be able to report it and know how to do that. And the responsibility is that we as company owners need to be able to say to our employees, if you see something wrong, you need to tell me. And if I don't do anything about it, you need to tell the privacy commissioner. That's your responsibility.
Well, and that's what we hope for in all organizations, whether it's private or public or government. We'd hope that somebody would do something about it if it's not in everybody's best interest, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's a bit of a it's a dicey concept, and some people are like, I would fire that person immediately. That's a bad choice.
Well, yeah, and those are the people you don't want running the ship, right?
Yeah.
So, these 10 principles are great, guidelines, but for us, this kind of just leads down to that 3-pronged approach that you were talking about. Identifying your assets, identify the risk and likelihood of breach or compromise, right? How likely is it to happen? And then obviously how valuable is that individual thing? And then put in safeguards, redundancy, auditing, reporting, and responsible individuals to review. Make sure you put in, obviously, we talk about this all the time. Insurance companies are fine with you having a roadmap and saying, we're aware of, or even the privacy commission, we're aware we have a gap here. We're not big enough to have an audit committee. Right. But we're getting there, and we're moving this way, and we're putting these things in place, and we're going to get there over, this amount of time, but we're going to get there. We're aware of it.
Yeah, exactly. The government's looking for you to show that you are responsible. And insurance companies want to see that as well. If an insurance company, if you're applying for a cyber policy, and cyber policies that cover this privacy exposure, if you're applying for one of these things, they want to know that you at least have a privacy statement, that you have you have a practice of controlling the information you take in, which is why they always ask, how many records do you have? And if you're over 10,000, the next question is, what are your procedures around controlling the information?
And that leads me to a story that I know of personally, of a company that had auditing in place. Well, so it's a tool that we run that was auditing all access to all files. So who accessed what, when? It's an extra. It's an extra cost for them per month, but they wanted this type of, in-depth analysis, and they kind of were proactive about it, right? So they put this in place, and we were monitoring and logging all this access. So a breach did happen, and thankfully they had this in place because they were able to report that, instead of having to report an entire directory of all of their customers, it was having to report to all of those customers. They only had to report to one customer. And so instead of ruining the reputation with all their customers, they just were able to address that. One customer saying, only your records were breached. And hey, by the way, we're probably doing you a favor because we're letting you know that they purposely, they breached us. And when they did breach us, they only went for your information. So maybe you're being targeted. or maybe they came to us through you or because of you. So, hey, get your spidey senses, start doing some digging. You're probably at risk as well. So it actually bonded the relationship with that customer instead of potentially losing that customer. But again, they didn't have to make a big public statement, ruin their reputation, spend hundreds of thousands of dollars repairing their reputation and potentially losing customers. So, being proactive and identifying what their data is, what are their assets, whether it's their physical or digital, and putting in those safeguards, save themselves a bunch of headaches.
It saves them a bunch of headaches. And I would just add to that, if that company, once they became aware that they've been breached, if they had a cyber privacy policy in place, like insurance, they would have been able to activate that policy. It would have paid for all the cost of notifying all those customers involved. You would have had brand and reputational harm experts at your call. You can call them to advise you how to best communicate, how to write that email. I have seen some terrible notification emails where they burn their ref just by the nature of the email they sent out. Yeah. So, having a consultant that says, let's write it like this as opposed to this.
Let's not say that. Yeah.
Let's not say that. Yeah. And so, you've got these costs that are covered. If the privacy commissioner, says we want to investigate your practices, that cyber policy would pay for the cost of the privacy investigation. If you're found negligent and you have a fine, it would pay for the fine. If you were named in a class action lawsuit, if people said, hey, our privacy information is out, we're going to sue you, the policy would pay for that as well. So, best practices, which is why I love the relationship with innovation. You guys are about best practices, and I'm about the chaos that can occur even with the best practices and making sure you're resilient. Do the very best you can. Use all the tools that innovation has. Make sure you're doing the right things. And then if chaos still strikes, let's make sure you're resilient on the insurance side as well.
And what happens too is, and you can testify to this as well. If you're doing none of this stuff, when you do go for coverage, it's going to be much more expensive. But
more expensive.
If you're doing all of it and you get proper coverage, it's going to be much more affordable.
I know if we're doing the right things, and I said, trust me, they have the tech to check you with everything you do in the connected world. Instantaneously, they know exactly what you're doing and they rate you accordingly.
And not to mention, when they do the forensic after the fact audit, they can find out if when it was in place. This is technology, ladies and gentlemen. There's zeros and ones that mark dates as to when this was in place. Okay, yes, you're not gonna be able to hide behind your finger. Everybody will see you. So don't bother trying to fool the insurance companies. It's not going to be in your best interest. But if somebody were to
the privacy commissioner,
because they're gonna ask for the same accountability. But let's say somebody was oblivious to this, and let's say somebody ignored something that was reported. What are the financial risks potentially on this stuff? I know
it's so the official law says that in events of gross negligence, the fine for a file exposure can be up to $100,000 per file exposed. Now, that is the worst possible case, and we haven't seen that applied in Canada yet. But let's just say one of the big telecoms had a breach recently, and they did not report it, and it was investigated, and they were slapped a fine, and it was in the millions. It was seven figures, and it was the first example we saw in Canada. This is about 2 years ago. Subsequently, there have been a number of fines applied. Typically, they're averaging around $2,000 to $10,000 a record is what the fines are being right now. So you start doing the math about your clients. So if you got 10,000 records at $2,000 a record at the low end of the fines, let's just say having the right practices, putting the right safeguards in place, and having insurance is the best money you ever spent.
Darn right it is. Yeah. I don't want to be on the other side of that letter.
No, you don't.
not having insurance, eh? That would be a bad day.
I've seen too many bad days.
Yeah,
and actually, to the credit of insurance companies, I have seen them step up with people who have chosen not to buy insurance. They'll call us and say, hey, we didn't buy this coverage. This has occurred to us. We'll call the insurance companies, 2 of them in particular, and say, hey, can you help these guys out? And they'll say, yeah, we'll help them out. We'll get them back up and running, and we'll direct them in the right way. But if they don't buy insurance next year, this will never happen again.
Insurance companies do have hearts. It is true sometimes.
A couple of them.
Yeah, we don't want to get too widespread with our.
No, you know what? Insurance companies are in the business to pay claims, but they have rules around why they pay claims, and so they want customers to do the right thing, and they'll make you resilient if you do the right things.
No, fair enough. And you know, I would say the insurance companies of late, they want to pay claims, and they want to pay them quickly, and they want people to know that they're going to get paid, right? It's part of their business model, right? They don't just not pay any claims, because they went through a little bit of that, I would say, in the 70s.
There was, the industry has a bad rep for a reason, and in the last 15 years, you've seen insurance companies and brokers like myself step up and say, okay, you know what, we can do way better than this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
we can have the interests of our clients at the very forefront, and I'm proud of the work that our team does and the insurance companies do. It's pretty amazing to watch them make people resilient. That's what gets me up in the morning. I want to see my clients not just survive a horrible incident, but thrive on the other side of it.
Yeah, well, it can be life altering. If you have the right coverage in place, or if you don't.
Yeah, if you don't, it can be as well. Yeah,
and it can be horrific. Anyway, all right, Sean. I appreciate. I know this was a long one today, so
yeah. Hopefully, people stuck with us. We're really entertaining.
I know everybody over there having a party. They're all like, "Okay, it's over! Yay!
Woohoo!
Woohoo! Party in the house!" All right, Sean. I appreciate it, sir. Have yourself a great day.
Thank you. You too. Take care, Andreas. Bye.